Hello everyone, welcome to the new episode of Professionals Unplugged. I am your host Utkarsh Shukla and let me introduce you to my guest Karen. Karen, thank you so much for joining in.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Looking forward to talking with you.
Thank you so much Karen. So let's begin with our very basic question. Can you please introduce our audience about yourself? Like what you do or anything you want to talk about yourself, that would be great too.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I always like to lead with is that I am an artist. I love to create things and I love to help other people create things. And I have a passion for helping other people to awaken their creativity and really harness that power within them to imagine something else and make it a reality. And I do that in lots of different ways. Of course, I paint and draw and do all that kind of lovely stuff. I am also an illustrator. I have an illustration company and I mostly do children's books. And then I have another company called HowDoodle, and it really serves people who identify as creative and are struggling with certain executive function issues or challenges in their lives. So that's a brief synopsis. I also have several cats and they're running around if you hear them.
That's pretty awesome of you. So as you mentioned, you are an artist and you love to create art and you are a founder of two companies, as you have mentioned. So what was the reason behind founding this company and why like there are two companies that right now you are working on it? So generally people struggle with one company, but you are somehow managing two, right? So can you just
Yeah.
enlighten us on the same?
I never intended to have two companies. I was really resisting it for a long time. When I started my illustration company, that was the first one I started. And it really came about because I've been in education for over 2 decades. And so books were just a natural fit. And somebody along the way was like, will you illustrate this book? And then it kind of snowballed. But when I started the company officially, I started it with an apprenticeship. And so there were other people in my life who were like, oh, how are you getting these gigs? How are you getting to illustrate children's books? I want to do that. And so with my teaching background and my coaching background, I used to coach a lot of teachers. I was like, well, I'll put together an apprenticeship. So they learn my methods. I teach them, I work with them. And in exchange, they did different things for my business. And I just loved that. And so I kept coaching as a part of my business, but eventually it became really clear that who I was coaching was a certain kind of person. And I just wanted to separate that out from the illustration so I could speak to illustration clearly and I could speak to that aspect of my work more clearly. So it got divided, but they play together, they play
Right.
together.
So what was the main reason like behind doing illustration or having a company for where you are helping artists um, to know what they want to create or help them in their career, right? As you mentioned, the second company, right? So
Yeah.
any stories behind that you like to share with?
Yeah, I'm so one thing that I really believe about the world is that it needs us to be creative. It needs us to awaken to our creativity and share it in all its unique forms, whatever that is, because that's when we actually get out of our downward spirals, when we feel empowered to make something new, to create a new experience or a new situation or an art piece or a beautiful experience for your family, right? Like when you feel empowered to create things, that's when we see new solutions, we get new ideas. And that's really important to me. I also have a background working for social justice organizations. And the part that I always gravitated towards and what I actually did my grad school around was using art for social change, like the power of our creativity to make a difference because it's very connective. It's very collaborative. It's not so divisive. We're not like, I mean, there can be agendas, but it's not so hard hitting. It's more like, let me welcome you into this conversation. Let me demonstrate. Let me show you what I'm thinking or feeling in ways that maybe we struggle with in normal modes of communication or just talking and conversation. So, um, it's a big reason that really drives me to keep creating my own work because it really lights up me in other ways and other things in my life. And I get a lot of joy out of creating, of course. And there's things I like to do and say and be a part of there. But also, like, I really want to have other people feel inspired and uplifted in that way too, so that life starts to be better for all of us, right? Like we all need to be a part of that. If you follow your joy, it will be more joyful. We will feel your joy.
That's pretty awesome of you. And it's happy to hear that you wanted other people also to grow alongside you once you are teaching them and helping the people to grow, right? So, do you think creativity comes by birth, or like some people think that some people are born with creativity, like they are very pretty good artists, while some people believe that it is an skill that can be learned over time, right? What are your thoughts on the same?
I love this question. It's a really juicy one. I think that if you're human, you're creative. I think it's innate. However, I definitely think that it has to have some space. It needs room. And a lot of times we understandably get very caught up in all the to-dos and the routines and obligations. And some people are even in more dire situations. So it's things get shut down, right? Like I think it's a clamp that gets shut down. Um, and with, in terms of skills, I think there are things that you can practice to coax it back out again, but I think it's your natural state. I don't think it's something you have to necessarily learn. I think it's something you have to reopen to. And there are various practices that I help people to do to kind of feel that flow again and to say, oh, here it is. That feels like me. I'm ready, let's do it.
I think that is pretty awesome. You said it's not a skill, but it is something that is already inside us that we need to open and discover among ourselves only. Like what
Mhm.
creativity we are in. Like I think some people they might think creativity is just about drawing something uh, or it's like making some kind of a art or something, right? But I think creativity is all about everything that humans surround us with, from
Mhm.
not just drawing, but it's also the seeing the world and trying to find creativity in each and every aspect. I think you might agree with me on the same point. Like creativity is
Mhm.
not just about art or like making things; it's more deeper into it. So, how you will define creativity? I mean, I wanted to listen from you.
Well, what comes up for me too is that um, there's creative acts, but creativity is more about how we approach things, right? It's the how behind what we're doing. And I agree with you. There's a reason why artists have artist blocks. Like even artists can block up their creativity, right? Just because you're an artist doesn't mean you're in a creative space all the time. If you practice making things regularly, you're more likely to be in a flow. But there are things within even the art making that can dam it up. Like if you're getting too judgmental, if you're not experimenting with enough things, if you don't have an inspiration practice, the creativity gets dammed up in any creative and any artist as well. So yeah, creativity is for everybody, and I would even venture to say that art is for everybody. I get really passionate about this too. Like I think we need to take art back. Like it's been put on some kind of pedestal, and I think music, drawing, singing, dancing, all that stuff is something that each and every one of us should have access to as a form of expression. And it's one way that we can exercise and share our creativity. But no, it could be in everything that we do too. It can be in how we have this conversation right now, right?
Yeah, I totally love this point. Like you have mentioned, creativity can be in the form of singing, dancing, and that can also help you in the way of exercising yourself. So it's like if you are being into creativity, you might be doing everything right that is required as a human to you, correct? And it's pretty awesome to discover the things around you, like how you can find the creativity within yourself or within your surroundings, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, often if people are thinking like feeling bored with their life or unmotivated about something, it's like, oh, there's something that they're missing some juice, right? And I think of creativity as the juice in anything. It's like, oh, let's look at this a little differently. Let's approach this a little differently. And then suddenly you want to do the thing. Like I was just talking to somebody earlier today, and she's a coach as well. And she was really struggling with outreach, like the outreach you have to do in order to get people to come to the things you want to share. And the question I asked her was like, well, how are you approaching it? Are you just doing what you think you should do? Or are you interested in the way that you're doing the outreach? And she's like, I'm not very interested in the way that I'm doing it. And I was like, what do you think if you actually had a fun way of doing that? She's like, I might actually do it, right? So it could be in anything that we do, putting some juice back in to make it, any mundane task can be something that is a little bit more joyful and light.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty valid point. Like people generally get bored in our lives. Even we, I mean, if I give my example, I also sometimes get bored in my life. But then if I see around, there are many things to do and many creative things to do. By creativity, I mean it can be playing sports as well, where you are trying to show your strength or skills or even your creativity, like how differently or how well you can do the things that can also fall in the art of creativity, right? So that's a pretty good thing. I think you just mentioned, like creativity is about finding the juice in our lives that we think we are missing it or getting bored. So I think
Mhm.
thank you so much on enlightening us on the scene. I think that's a pretty
Yeah.
right point, and that is something that I think we all just miss in our life, right?
Yeah, if you're feeling a little dry, you probably are kind of bored with what's going on, and we got to get some creative
Correct.
thinking going. Hmm.
So
Yeah,
next
even your
question.
podcast,
Mhm.
right? Starting your
Yeah,
podcast, that probably brought some juice, right? Back into
correct,
your days. Like you said, it's 10 p.m. your time. You must have some juice going. I would, you can't stay up at 10
correct.
p.m. interviewing people if it
Yeah,
doesn't bring you some creative way.
yeah. I mean, this is what kept me motivating, and I love talking to people. That's how I started. The time doesn't matter. So yeah, I think that's how we are now connecting the dots.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
one question I would like to ask you is: there is any story from your personal life or professional life that you like to share with us that you think should be heard by the people all over the world?
Mm, which story? Well, I will share the story of how I reopened my creativity during a drive spell. How about that one?
That
It's
would
a
be
pretty
perfect.
good one. It actually became the impetus for my second company, HowDoodle. So I was really just, I don't know, zapped, right? Like a lot of things were going on. I was living in Chicago at the time, and I was doing a million different little jobs to pay high rent, teaching, coaching, running around everywhere, private lessons, you name it, I was doing it. And I decided, okay, I'm going to stop this way of life. And I don't know what I'm doing yet because I'm not even making much art. Like I'm really, except for client work. That was another piece of it. I was so caught up in client work and not my own art. Like I didn't know what to do for my own art anymore. And I hit the road on a road trip that lasted about 8 months. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And I got really frustrated one day. And I had this little like moleskin, I don't like, they're pretty popular for artists, these little sketchbook things in my glove compartment of my car. So I whipped it out. I had a pen and I just drew something. And it was done in like, a few minutes, but I was like, wow, that's really satisfying. I saw something through to the end, right? Like I made something and I saw it all the way through, where for months all I had were unfinished things I started and couldn't finish. And so even though it wasn't like a masterpiece, I was still like, that was very satisfying. And so over the course of this road trip, I kept doing it. I just kept opening that book and in 5-10 minutes just whipping out a little doodle. And just the idea starting flooding back. Like, I don't know if you can see back here, but this is a stack of some of my doodle books now. I have one open on my desk. And now I started bringing doodling into my coaching. And the pandemic, I offered doodle shops for people to come together and express what they were going through. And so this is a simple thing that is so important to know, which is that creativity doesn't require a ton of time. It really doesn't. You can do something in 5 minutes to spark yourself. You can do something in 5 minutes that like helps you feel a little bit more recentered and calms, all the thoughts in your head for a second so you can see something else more clearly. And I play with doodles constantly now. And yeah, that's why one of the reasons my business called How Doodle, it's more of a philosophy than anything at this point.
Yes, I got the
Although
point.
we do doodle.
Yeah, I think I got the point. What you're trying to say is when you complete the whole task from starting to the end, and the pleasure that you get from, hey, I have completed this thing. Like the story you have mentioned from you, like you told me that there was some unfinished business that was going to end when you completed the doodle from start to end. It felt good. It felt like, yes, it can
Yeah,
be
like you
done.
actually
Right?
just expressed something even in that short amount of time, right? Like it captured something for me and I understood something else looking at it that I didn't understand before. And I was like, okay, this is powerful. This is powerful stuff. I'm going to share it.
So, what is your dream right now? I know it should be related to how to do, but if you like to share with us, that would be great.
What's my dream? In so many ways, I feel very much like I live my dream, which is really fun. Um, so I like to look at it as a bit of a paradox, right? Like finding the dream in what exists in the now and also having a vision for the future. So I like to mention both because I think it's very important to hold both. Right now, I love that I have my own companies. I love that I get to work with creative people. I love that I get to bring more creativity in the world. I like that I make art. I like that I have a flexible schedule. So if we want to travel, I can go on the road if I want to, or fly somewhere. And I just think the future is more of that, like more and more of that. I have some pretty big creative visions, art pieces in my mind right now. One being like these doodle machines that I want to apply for some grant money for. Maybe I need to talk to you about some programming. Like there's some pretty big pieces in there. So I get excited thinking about working out that and doing my work from wherever we decide to travel. My partner and I are quite into moving around and trying out new places. So that's some of what I'm thinking about and dreaming about and being right now too.
That's pretty awesome. So living the moment and also having some goals for the future.
Yeah, I think it's really important to hold both.
Right.
It's important to hold.
And
Yeah.
if I ask about how Doodle, so what's next for it? Like as you mentioned, you are already helping people do the doodle. So what is the main aim right now for the same?
Well, you caught me in a really big moment actually, because I am in the beginning of creating online courses so that people can do it for themselves, find some really creative and practical um, support, and ideas for the things that they're struggling with, so they'll have more creative freedom, some more space in their day, their schedule, their minds, their bodies to create. And so my first course is called Get Your Shit Together, Transform Chaos into Creative Freedom. And I'm really excited about it. The doors are open now through April 5th for my beta test. So people who come in early get to help me develop it and get to be a little bit more individualized for them. And of course, there's chances to be directly working with me too while you're doing this course. So I have a ton of courses in mind. I really want to make HowDoodle something that is accessible for people to come into. Not everybody can afford a coaching hour, it's kind of, and it has to be a rate that allows me to be an entrepreneur. But also like that also limits who I can reach. And I just love the idea of these courses being something that's more accessible, can reach more people and just bring us all into the fold so we can help each other out and stimulate each other with our creative ideas.
Correct. That's pretty awesome. I think you are trying to connect with more and more people and share your insights at the same time. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you. I'm excited. Yeah. Fulfills the teacher part of me too. Like I'm like, ooh, I get all nerd out when I have to create a curriculum. Like I'm like, yeah, yeah. Like I like it.
That's pretty awesome. I think once a teacher always remains a teacher, and the teacher inside them never goes away, right?
Nope, nope, not at all. Not if you're really truly a capital T teacher. It just stays right with you.
Okay, Karen. So thank you so much, Karen. It was a lovely experience talking to you. It was pretty insightful, and I hope we can meet each other on HowDoodle in a course and see how
Yeah,
things went. Right?
that would be great. Thank you so much. Your questions were amazing. Love this conversation.
Thanks, Karen.